Hi, and welcome to this episode of the 01581 Let's Talk. I'm your host, Shelby Marshall. I'm one of your five select board members, and the purpose of this show is to connect you with people who you need to know and to things you need to know about. And I'm really excited to have a returning guest, Jennifer Gingris. She is our director of planning here in Westboro. So when we think about how do we use land and how do we develop it and things like permitting, she is in the heart of that. And speaking in the heart of it, we're going to go right to the heart of things today and talk about a really exciting project called the Downtown Improvement Project. You may have seen signs, teepee signs, yard signs posted about an upcoming event on June 11th. Jenny's going to talk about that. But we're going to talk about what does the future of Westboro's downtown look like, and what is this whole thing about this improvement project? So, Jenny, welcome to the show, and thanks for returning.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shelby. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, this is great. So we have an upcoming event on June 11th, and I know you'll talk about the event, but let's talk about the project. So take it away.
First, I just wanted to start off with just giving a description of the project. So, the Downtown Improvement Project is really about revitalizing the downtown, creating a safer, more accessible, more vibrant place for residents, visitors, and the businesses. So, I'll go ahead and take you through the slides, and essentially, I'll show you where we are in the process and then how the public can be involved. And then I'll talk about the upcoming meeting on June 11th.
Great.
So when we start planning projects, I always like to take a trip back in time to really see where we started because I think it's really important before we look at, potential changes or modifications. We really have to understand the history. Um, So, as you can see in the timeline here, the vision for downtown has been evolving for nearly a century. And I'm sure I missed some key plans here, but this is what I had. Um, so, in 1931, I'm sure everybody knows, the Boston Worcester trolley line was discontinued and the Rotary was constructed in its place. So, that kind of shifted how people traveled through the downtown. And then shifting many decades later after that, I actually found pretty recently that in 1982, the town had created a plan called Westboro at the Crossroads.
I did not know that. That's so
Yeah,
interesting. Wow.
I do. And I have a full copy of it.
Wow, that's
And
so cool. I just have like goosebumps. Like we were doing this kind of planning in the past and just even thinking about how I've seen Phil Kittredge's photos of the downtown when the trolley lines were there, and just to think about what did that look like then, and now seeing this picture up in the upper right-hand corner, like then we had to something changed and we created this thing called the Rotary. Fascinating.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty cool to see that evolution. And then the what is really interesting is that in the 1982 plan, which, might seem like a long time ago, but it it has stayed relevant because and I'll describe a little bit of it on the next slide, but the same themes are there of what people wanted to see, the same concerns. So it's
Wow.
pretty interesting. Um, the bottom right hand photo is actually from 1982. So that is the Rotary or the downtown that year.
Yeah,
And then
Bay
the
State
upper,
abrasives, you see that in the back corner. Yeah, I was like, what is that there? Yeah,
yep,
interesting.
exactly. Yep, exactly right. And the top right, as I'm sure you guessed, is rendering of the I think it's 1932 that is dated of the Rotary. So we actually have a photo in the Forbes building of the trolley line being taken up in the downtown. So it's
Wow.
pretty cool.
It's interesting, I on the post on the upper right hand, the rendering, I forgot that that was a post office. And now when I look at it, I'm like, of course it was a post office. It sort of has that look of a post office. And of course now it's a business. So interesting.
Yeah,
We have
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So we'll fast forward some decades to 2002. The master plan at that point identified the downtown as a key area for improvement around transportation and zoning. One of the main points in that was about the base rate abrasives and wanting to see the zoning changed for that as well. So that was really when that started to come about. And then in 2016, through MassDOT, a road safety audit was done that flagged some issues around the rotary and the intersections. In 2018, we had the strategic plan, which did list the downtown revitalization as a top priority, in addition to requesting a full master plan update, which was done.
Mhm.
So in 2019 and 2020, we also took a closer look at the parking downtown through our regional planning agency, CMRPC, and a dedicated study was done that helped give us that data on the parking usage. Then in 2021, we did our updated master plan, which also placed a strong emphasis on pedestrian safety, improving the traffic flow, and then adding some bike accommodations as well. And then finally, most recently, we did the downtown plan, which builds upon all of that past work. And it really focuses on rethinking the Rotary to make it safer and more functional for drivers, walkers, cyclists, so everybody. So
Great.
I think
Yeah.
that timeline, again, like you can see the common themes throughout.
Yeah, it is. It is so interesting to see this, and I'm sure folks will have questions about the Westport, the Crossroads, and some of those themes. But it also puts into relevance how long it takes communities to make these changes, right? So it really starts with ideas. They sort of snowball. Maybe they veer off path a little bit for any number of reasons, but it really takes a consistent effort to move big projects forward. And so
Yeah,
here
right
we are.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah, right on. So here, and I tried to make this as readable as possible, and I'll post a link to this plan on the website as well. So in 1982, like I mentioned before, the themes were the same, and I won't read this whole thing, but I think the last sentence in the first text box is really interesting.
yeah.
I love the writer here. The Rotary Island is completely cut off from pedestrians. Anyone attempting to cross the river of traffic does so at risk of life and limb. Likewise, crossing street entrances and exits is dangerous, especially during rush hours. So I love the river of traffic
I love
comment.
that. And
Um,
I also would imagine in 1982, we probably don't have that data. I know you have current traffic data and movement through the Rotary. As a guess, I would imagine it was something like a third less than what we have today. I mean, I'm just
mm.
guessing that many years ago, 40 years ago.
Yeah, it could have been. What's interesting is that we recently pulled the data from MassDOT's website because they do keep track. They do traffic counts every 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
And I think the earliest I found for this area was 1994. And it was about the same number of vehicles for at least South Street.
Okay.
West Main and East Main did see more, but South Street was pretty similar, which is interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
I was very surprised to see
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. So then the second text box you can read it, but essentially it talks about the downtown themes that people want to see. They want it to be easy to get to, both on foot and by car, and likewise easy to get around in. Um, so you can see where those themes are the same things that we're hearing today in 2025.
Rush hour bottlenecks, parking, um, the kind of pleasant to linger, crossing safe, well marked. So interesting. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what we're hearing today in the
Yep.
feedback that I've been getting. Um, so that's what this project is all about, trying to make these goals become reality.
Great.
This is the last time I'll talk about 1982. But this was the what they called the Optimum Plan in there. So similar to how we came up with the triangle concept in the 2024 downtown plan, they came up with this as the proposal. So you can see here, there's a pedestrian walkway. So this is the monument in here, and they wanted people to be able to safely access that area without necessarily having a rotary. And
Wow.
we similarly came up with that as a possibility of a pedestrian type walkway, um, due to public feedback again. And then this here, I'm not sure, which directions these cars are going, but you can see
Yeah.
that it created an intersection instead of a rotary.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, the theme, more organized rotary layout, improved traffic flow, and then dedicated pedestrian walkway.
Great.
So now back to modern day, or yeah, I guess back to modern day. We'll talk about the finalized downtown plan from 24, which brings all this past planning, community input, and modern thinking together into one comprehensive vision.
Mhm.
So this was the official statement from the downtown plan that downtown Westboro will be a vibrant, walkable center that preserves its historic New England charm while fostering a lively atmosphere with diverse shops, restaurants, and cultural spaces. And then it does go on and talk about, controlled traffic, improved pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, accessibility, things like that.
Mhm.
And then you'll see a rendering here which is based off of that public feedback, that vision, and that triangle concept that the public seemed to agree on, at least at the last meetings.
Jenny, when was that last meeting? When did this kick off?
This was in January of 24 that this kicked off, and we had I'll go through the public input on a later
Okay.
slide, but we did a meeting in April and then in June
Okay.
of
Thank you.
24. Yeah. And they're all recorded too, thanks to Westboro TV. So anybody's welcome to watch those presentations there.
Where would folks find those links? Are they found under the planning department in the downtown plan or?
Yep, if you go to the planning department webpage, we have a tab for the downtown improvement project. You can just click on that and it breaks down all of the resources or links to recordings.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that downtown plan obviously found a lot of existing mobility conditions that we know. High traffic volume and congestion, especially during the peak hours. There's gaps and deficiencies in the overall roadway network. We have the rail bridge that limits clearance and can create bottlenecks. And then, of course, the safety conflicts, inadequate pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. It essentially, we found that it makes it really hard to navigate downtown without a car. And when you're in a car, it's also unsafe because it's a little ambiguous with the right of ways, right? Um,
So Jenny, could you orient us on the image on the right-hand side to what the viewers would be looking at here?
sure. So this is the arcade building here. This would be East Main Street coming into the Rotary. And then up here would be West Main Street. Over here is South Street.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So this is the bank building right here.
Okay, and so if we just pause for a moment, so you see again just the variety of issues that have been identified. So imagine that long way to walk as a pedestrian on that would be Milk Street off of East Main with the red box there. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yep. So
So
there's that long period where you've got cars turning potentially as well as those coming through the rotary. Huge street on that side. And yet just beyond the arcade building in the yellow, we've all driven through that trying to enter the rotary, inching out past cars, looking, is there a pedestrian? Who's stopping? Um, and then in the blue box, we've got angular parking in front of what is the Westboro Liquor Store there, and that potential kind of mixed use building where you have cars trying to pull in on an angle, back out, while other cars are turning from West Main or potentially coming through from Milk Street.
mhm.
Um, and then, once you get the green light goes, so to speak, although there are no lights coming from Route 30, not Route 30, Ruggles, right?
Ruggles. Okay.
Ruggles,
Yep.
thank you. Past the horse trough, it's like, oh, I've got my opening, let me accelerate, right?
Yep.
So the folks coming over by 7-Eleven in between the old post office, they're like, can I go, can I not? So many things, and then maybe a few pedestrians trying to cross through all of that.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's a wonder, it is a wonder that no one has been seriously hurt.
it
I
is.
mean,
And
there have been some accidents, don't get me wrong.
oh yeah,
I should correct that. I'm
right.
not aware of any fatalities, but I am aware of people getting hurt, and it is a wonder there have been more, would be the correct way to say that.
Right. I'm not aware of any fatalities either, thankfully, but there have been accidents and there have been a couple of pedestrian injuries.
Yep.
My staff and I, we did go out as part of the exercise with the consultant, and we filmed the Rotary at different angles just to see what we could capture. Because I think one of the things that we hear is, from some folks is that they don't see anything wrong with the rotary. It works for what it is, right? And I think that as you get familiar with something, you know how it works. Like I drive through it every day. I'm familiar with the different nuances, whether what or how I'm driving or other people are driving are correct or not. But when you stand out there and you watch what is going on, there's a lot of close misses, a lot
Mhm.
of slamming on brakes, a lot of people driving into a crosswalk when there's a pedestrian there. We
Mhm.
captured that multiple times within the 10 minutes of just observation. Um, People driving around, people backing out of these parking spaces that you said in front of the Westboro
Yep.
liquor store. Even emergency vehicles trying to get around and people not knowing what to
Right.
do, where to pull over.
Where do I pull over? Do I go inside? Do I go outside? Are they going toward Ruggles? Am I like, yeah, yeah.
Right, right. And then there's also the problem of there's um 5 ways, I think, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine different directions you could go
Mhm.
off of this rotary, which is a lot.
And
And
more than once, I have seen people going the wrong way in the rotary.
yes, I've heard that. That's a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
common comment.
And
Where do I
yeah,
go?
yeah, and I would say, look, I grew up with rotaries. I don't think rotaries are the issue. I think people are like, and so you make a great point, Jenny, that if you're familiar with it, you know how to navigate it, and that's great. But knowing how to navigate and being comfortable with something is different than saying, could it be improved? And I think that that's where this conversation is going. If we made changes in the long term, what could that mean to revitalizing the downtown? And so you're
Right.
going to show us the next lens of this.
Yeah, exactly. So we've recognized these issues. They aren't new issues, as you saw from the other things. They've persisted for many years. But the downtown plan from 24 gave us a clear strategy to finally address them in a coordinated way.
Great.
So the recommended improvements that came out of there were a little bold, but again, I think it would transform the Rotary into a place where, pedestrians could feel safe. It would
Mhm.
help with the flow of traffic. It would reduce those conflict points that we were talking about. So essentially enhance safety. The
Okay.
proposal, after doing a lot of study for the data, the traffic data, the volumes, it really warranted the need for some sort of signalized intersection. Um, we found that just, changing the rotary and making it a little more modernized would not really help with the flow of traffic. It would probably keep it the same.
Mhm.
Um, and again, we can't get rid of cars, right? The cars are always going to be there.
Yeah.
Um, but we can make it flow better. We can make it safer so that you're not wondering, do I yield? Do I stop?
Mhm.
Do I just blow through? So we can make those things better. This also focuses on the walkability because we heard from the public that that's really something that they wanted to see. So upgrading the crossings throughout the downtown and having a signal would make that a little easier to have those safe crosswalks.
Yep.
Um, and then putting in bike accommodations. So we're still evaluating whether we can have a dedicated bike lane due to the spacing of how much we have to work with. But we want to acknowledge that we're taking that into consideration. We want an area that every user can
Yeah.
feel safe using.
Yeah, and sometimes I think, particularly in the biking piece, I think it's, and I'm not a planner, so forgive me if I'm way off on this, but I think it's not only the physical structures that a community creates, but it's also sort of a cultural or mentality of like recognizing that that is a mode of transportation that needs to be respected.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I don't, candidly, I don't think we have that here in Westboro. I think that's why we see every day, I see kids riding, and I shouldn't just say kids, adults riding bikes on sidewalks, and now with motorized scooters,
Mm,
bikes that go quite fast. Um,
right.
and it's dangerous. And yet I understand being a parent, being a beginner biker myself, I can ride a bike, but like, excuse me, yeah, it would be scary to ride down any of these streets currently. It is scary. And so that's
Right.
people say go on the sidewalk, but that's really not the purpose of it. So walk
Right.
us through what we're seeing here, or is there another slide?
There's not a slide that shows this specifically. My next slide is going to talk more about the public involvement and the next steps.
Well, just to orient us, so I think folks can see here, just spend a minute more. So in East Maine, it looks like, and let me back up because people are saying, wow, like, how does this happen? So the first thing people go to, are there public takings that would be required? Let me just ask that.
Yeah, so we're proposing no public takings. We had a full in-depth survey done so that we know exactly where the property lines are. So we're
Thank
not
you.
proposing any takings.
That's an important one because, on the one hand, you want to encourage business and development. On the other hand, it's like, how does this work and what's it going to cost, right? So no public takings, thank you. And so it looks like creating a signalized intersection roughly where the initial triangle is coming into from East Main Street.
Hmm.
Okay. And then going toward Brigham Street and South Street, you'd have another signalized intersection there. And just
Yep.
around that area, which would be kind of where the existing rotary is, but toward the, I guess, south would be where a new green space would be created.
Yeah, so well, new but not new, because one of the things that we heard is that that center is really important to Westboro,
Mhm.
understandably, right? You have the monument there that
Yeah.
was there when the Rotary was first put in, right?
Mhm.
So we want to preserve that.
Right.
And right now, it's not really a safe space to go to.
Yeah.
Um, you, I mean, you see people out there for different events and such, but it's really, you know, not a safe place to be.
Right.
So what we had heard from the public is that they wanted access to it where they could get across, they could enjoy it. You know,
Yeah.
you could sit out there,
Yeah.
have lunch or whatever, a coffee, and
Yep.
enjoy that area. So that's why you see here crosswalks to go into the center. So you're maintaining that, and
Yeah.
and that's really important.
Yeah. And thank you for that correction. Not new, just modified. So
Yeah.
maintaining the intent of it,
Mhm.
but in a safe accessibility way. Yep.
Right, right. We
Yep.
want people to be able to still enjoy it and feel like it's part of,
Mm.
the center of town. And I don't feel like right now, you feel like you can cross over there and go have a cup of coffee.
Yeah. No, no, no. That would be a challenge. Okay.
Yeah. So one detail I just want to
Mm.
point out is that this is a conceptual plan. So right now that's what we're doing. We're working on the preliminary design work. The traffic lights, might not be exactly where you see them here, or a crosswalk might be moved, something might not be one way. So we're working out those details.
Okay,
But
thank
this
you.
is based on the public feedback from
Okay,
last year and previous feedback from the master plan.
okay. So speaking of public feedback,
Mhm.
next slide.
Yeah. Um, so we did for the public involvement aspect, and again, I'll point out too that there was also public involvement through the master plan, the
Mhm.
strategic plan. There were surveys done, and so we did look at that feedback and incorporate it moving forward.
Great.
But specifically in 2024, we did a scavenger hunt survey where we had folks go around, find different landmarks in the downtown and give us feedback on how they got to it and how they feel about the existing conditions.
Yeah,
We also did a public workshop in April of 24 and then in June of 24, which were recorded by Westboro TV. So again, you can find those on our website. And then in July of 24, we had a joint planning board and select board meeting to present those findings for the plan and then, align on the next steps, which is where we are now. So it's definitely a collaborative effort. And, you know, these plans, they reflect the ideas and the priorities of the people that live and work in Westboro and visit here.
great. Great.
So I just wanted to say that point. So the goals of the downtown plan we have here, and this is based on that public feedback. They want to see more mixed use development, vibrant street life, diversify the retail and design dining options, walkability, pedestrian safety, looking at more outdoor gathering and green spaces, all while preserving that history of downtown, which is very important, understandably. Westboro has a beautiful downtown, a lot of historic buildings, and we want to make sure that we have a downtown that reflects the identity of Westboro and then, but also meets these everyday needs of our community now and in the future.
Great. It's exciting.
Yeah. The preliminary design timeline, which is what we're doing now, through the consultant, we have to dig deeper into, these details.
Mhm.
Data collection, we did updated traffic counts, we looked at pedestrian patterns, the curb use, so parking, um, traffic and parking assessment. We wanted to understand how the proposed changes would affect the flow, the safety, access. And we're not just looking at within the next couple years. This is something we're looking at how it will impact Westboro for 10 to 30 years.
Mhm.
We're really taking that long
Yeah.
look at how this will affect us. And we do that by looking at the demographics, um, the projected development, things like that,
Mhm.
because we don't want something that we need to change again in even 10 years, right? We want it to last.
Right.
Um,
Great.
yeah. So I know this is always a question, and it's a good
I
one.
was
It's an
going to go
important
there,
one.
so thank you for having the slide.
I knew you would. Um, so this round of the downtown project, we
Mhm.
did receive a grant through the Mass Works program. It was a $372,000 grant. And that program supports public infrastructure projects to be able to boost housing, private development, job creation, things like that. So for folks that don't know what that grant program does. Um, and then as we move forward, we plan to apply for additional grant funding through MassWorks again or other similar state programs. So we're going to attempt to get this done through grant funding. However, I will note that, some matching funds may be needed at some point. We didn't in this round need any matching funds from the town. We were able to obtain them from um, a property owner in the downtown, as MassWorks allows. And so Matching funds may be needed. I don't know if we'll request them at town meeting, if it will be through a private developer again, but yeah, so
Yeah.
hopefully this we can get this done through grants.
Yeah, yeah, well, and there's I love the idea of using grants. Even when there are matching funds, I do think that we all have to have skin in the game and appreciate kind of why are we committing funds. So if we don't have to, that's great, but I understand why we have to.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's important here, that second bullet on the page is that this is not just about private development and economic development, job creation, but also housing, right? So what do we want the downtown, wherever we define that, kind of north, south, east, west, to look like in terms of housing density? I know that there's a consideration for them, therefore, what's the infrastructure needs? You mentioned that on the prior
Hmm.
slide about sewer capacity and so on and so forth. And so I bring all this up for folks to just understand it's not just about, and I know Jenny, you're very much aware of this, it's not just about what's on the street surface, right?
Hmm.
Green space, safer crosswalks, some, traffic flow. There's a lot underground that has to be considered to kind of support all this as well. And so, these are this is an exciting but massive undertaking. But we've got great people leading it, and we clearly have a stated vision from the town,
Hmm.
consistent stated vision for decades,
Right.
right? Of how Westboro should proceed. So it's really nice to kind of see these two things aligning.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so this
Here we
is
go.
yeah, this is my last slide. So we want people to join the conversation. And as I mentioned to you, Shelby, before, we have been really powering up our public outreach to make sure that everybody knows about this meeting, that everybody knows this project is going on. So we really want to keep the momentum going. And as you can see in the past plans and the feedback, your input does matter.
Mhm.
Um, we have seen the consistent themes and we've taken that into consideration. So we hope that people can make it to this next meeting. It's on Wednesday, June 11th at 6 o'clock in the Great Hall of the Forbes Municipal Building. We will have some light refreshments, so don't worry about bringing your snacks.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll essentially be presenting that preferred triangle concept that I had up on the screen before. When I say preferred, it's because that was based on the public feedback that,
Yeah,
drove
that's
us to
where it
that
brought
point.
us to. This is where we're at, and I think it's important to say, and Jenny, I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? That we're at this place. The intent would be not to go back to revisit old or prior ideas that were presented back during the other public engagement sessions. However, this is an opportunity to really kind of like kick the tires and say, well, about a particular area,
Yeah,
how's this going to work, right?
right. Yeah, we want to fine tune this design, and
Yeah.
that's, based on feedback. And it could be, what do you think about if this was parallel parking instead of angled parking? Or what do you think about, this being one way or, a
Mhm.
crosswalk here? So those are just examples, but we really want the public to help us fine tune the design, because the public are the ones that are living through this
Yeah,
downtown every day.
yeah, absolutely. So folks, Wednesday, June 11th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. Send a member of your family. Kids are welcome too. They always have great ideas. You
Yeah.
have a high schooler, middle schooler who uses the downtown. Great way to engage them in a community that you love, and that you're a taxpayer in. And if you have a friend or a neighbor that can't go and they're like, oh, I wish I could, bring their ideas, right? They don't have to be your ideas, but bring them, bring those questions forward. The more people that are involved in this, we've seen this time and time again on a variety of projects across the community or various initiatives. The more people that are involved that have to say, the better the community buy-in is, or can move a project, kind of one way or another. And so it's really important. And Jenny, thank you so much to you and your team and all the people involved to really advertise this and promote this and get the word out, and to Westboro TV for fitting us in today for this taping so we can get this out to folks right away.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing everyone on June 11th. And if you have a comment and can't make the meeting, if you go to that link on the page there, you
Yeah.
can make a comment and it will get right to us about.
Awesome. So even if you can't go, but we want to see you there, the
Yep.
QR code is there. It's also on the signs that are around town. Just take a snapshot and send your feedback. Jenny, thank you so much for taking time today. Thank you, Westboro TV, for hosting us remotely today. And we'll see you on Wednesday, June 11th at the Forbes Municipal Building, the Great Hall. Take care.